Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to CAAC 12, From Posting to Profile, Building Your Best Agile Team. Before we dive into today's agenda, just a little bit of housekeeping for you. For our first public service announcement of the morning, Julie Wilson is from IT, and she's here to help. If you run into technical difficulties or any kind of trouble this morning, please chat or email with Julie. She'll get it sorted out for you if there is sorting to be done. Note, if you look up Julie in Teams, you'll need to know that her first name is actually Juliana. So now to get things rolling, we're going to turn the mic over to Tim Resch. Tim, talk to us about today's retrospective.
Hey, everybody. Tim Resch here, Department of Education. I will be facilitating the retrospective at the end of the 3 hours. It'll be the basic one, what went well for this conference.
What?
Sorry. Okay, so we're gonna have 3 columns. What went well in this conference? What? Someone want to chat? Okay. So standard retrospective, we're going to talk about what things that went well, things that didn't go so well, and things that we want to add maybe for future conferences. If you have ideas throughout the day, instead of putting it in your mind and hoping you remember at 11:30 or whenever the retrospective is, maybe put in the chat, maybe put like retro, and then whatever your comment is. And that way I can pick them up throughout the morning and pre-populate the retrospective board. And we get a jump on it at the end of the day. Any questions? All right, thank you, Stephen.
Sounds good, thanks, Tim. And everybody, please take advantage of that as you have ideas or comments about what's happening. Then please go ahead and jot those down rather than trying to remember them, and we'll catch them all at the end of the morning. Okay. So, are you a pro football fan? What's your team? Let's either unmute or in the comments who is your pro football team? And I'll start off by saying I grew up in Atlanta, so unfortunately for me, my team is the Atlanta Falcons. Who else?
I've lived in the Midwest, so mine Chiefs won. I'm happy about that.
And we see the Chiefs in the comments, and the Bears and the Ravens, the Patriots. Another vote for the Bears. Ooh, Tampa Bay. So there are, as it turns out, 32 pro football teams. And we're going to talk this morning about how they get better from year to year. And that's really the point. How are they going to get better next season? Before we do that, I'm going to open a poll. Let's talk about how your team did. We already heard from David, who said his team won. What about yours? Where'd they go? So, interestingly enough, the highest vote getter so far is what's the NFL? We'll give that another 5 seconds. Okay, so we had a few folks whose teams made the playoffs, and actually more who are Kansas City Chiefs fans. Your team won it all this year. The real question before the house is, how's your team gonna get better next season? So here we are at the beginning of the spring, and in spring, the young man's heart turns to thoughts of the pro football draft, of course. The draft is actually going on right now, and the combine is going on right now. The draft is going to be the last weekend in April, about 2 months from now, April 25th, 27th. Between now and then, and actually ever since last April, the teams have been working to figure out who they're going to add to their rosters so that they can make it to the Super Bowl in 2025. So how does the draft work? Well, I'm glad you asked. There are 7 rounds in the draft, and each team gets a pick in each round. The teams pick in reverse order of how well they did in the past season. So the team who won, the Chiefs this year, picks last. And the team who had the worst record for the season goes first. The idea, of course, is to give bad teams a chance to get better. In the first round, each team gets 10 minutes to decide what they're going to do with their pick. They can pick the best player available to them, or they can trade their pick away for an existing player, or for more later picks, or even just for cash. And that kind of trading, wheeling, and dealing goes on right up to and sometimes through each team's turn in each round. Now this year, the Carolina Panthers get the first pick of the draft, but they traded it away last year so they could pick first then. So the Chicago Bears are actually going to go first this year. In the second round, each team gets 7 minutes to make their selection. For rounds 3 through 6, they get 5 minutes. And in the final round, they get 4 minutes. And those few minutes are pretty crazy. Here's a shot of the Bears draft room last year after they made their first round pick. Now check out those walls. You think your Kanban board is complex? That's 4 walls of floor to ceiling, keeping track of everything that's going on. So in any given year, there are about 16,000 college athletes eligible for the draft, 16,000. So how in the world do teams figure out which 7 players they're going to go get? And the answer is, in part at least, that they don't look at all 16,000. Every year, the combine runs for 1 week in February. It's going on right now, started yesterday. This year, 321 athletes were invited to attend, and the event is by invitation only. Now yesterday, defensive linemen and linebackers were tested. Today, it's defensive backs and tight ends. Tomorrow, quarterbacks, wide receivers, and running backs, and then Sunday, offensive linemen. And athletes' performance during the combine can affect their draft status and salary, and ultimately, of course, their career. The draft has popularized the term workout warrior, whereby an athlete's draft stock is increased based on superior measurable qualities such as size, speed, and strength, despite having an average or subpar college career. Well, what gets tested? A lot of stuff. 40-yard dash, bench press, vertical jump, broad jump, 20-yard shuttle, 3-cone drill, 60-yard shuttle, position-specific drills, interviews, physical injuries and evaluations, drug screening, and the Cybex test, which measures flexibility and joint movement. Now, the one of those tests that might have sounded familiar to you as a hiring manager or a job applicant was the interview. However, even with that, there are some significant differences. Each team can interview up to 45 players for only 18 minutes each. Now that's 45 down from 321, which is selected from 16,000. Obviously, the teams are doing something to decide which 45 athletes they're going to interview. And the way they do that is they have lots of people working on it. Now, every team is different, of course, but this is a pretty good approximation of team front offices. And for the draft, the general manager is in charge, and he has a couple of dozen folks on his team who have been working throughout the past year to figure out who's going to be the best choice for each need that the team has. That's where the coaching staff comes in. They're the ones deciding where the biggest gaps are in their teams, and the head coach has at least a dozen coaches on his staff helping him to decide where he would most like to get new talent. Now, for some teams, it's the head coach making the draft decisions. Bill Belichick, for instance, from New England, most recently, famously made all the choices for New England while he was there. All right, let's bring this home. For the next couple of hours, we're going to be discussing Agile hiring, how you look for people to fill Agile roles, and if you're looking yourself, how you identify Agile agencies. When you start your search, how do you know what to look for and where to look? Who's going to help you? I'm going to guess that none of us on this call have a couple of dozen specialists on our staff working full-time to help us find exactly the right person to fill that vacancy on our Scrum teams. Nor do we have, unfortunately, several hundred highly skilled and gifted Agile athletes who would do almost anything to come join us. Nope, we got to do this the hard way, and that's what we're going to talk about the rest of the morning. So we've divided the morning into 3 sessions: the Agile job posting, the Agile interview, and the Agile EWP. For each topic, we're going to have one group discuss from the perspective of the hiring manager, and another group discussing from the perspective of the job applicant or employee. And we're hoping that you'll hear half a dozen different perspectives on each of these facets of the hiring and onboarding process. Now, to introduce our panels for the morning, on our hiring manager panel today, we have, me, Stephen Manley. I've been in IT for much longer than I'm willing to admit in polite company. I got my start in 1988. I've been a developer, a team lead, a supervisor, a project manager, and a manager in everything from 1 to 600 person IT shops. These days, and for the past 7 years or so, I've been the manager of IT application services at VSP. Now, there are about 50 folks in my section with 3 supervisors, 6 Agile teams, and a couple of project managers. I led the Agile transformation of VSP. I'm a certified product owner and a certified Agile leader through the Scrum Alliance. For today's discussion, I've been responsible for hiring folks both in the private and public sector for over 30 years. The other member of our hiring manager panel is Richard Matthews. Richard is the Chief Customer Experience Officer at VITA. He spent a decade in Naval Special Warfare. He spent another decade leading international and high-risk programs and PMOs for defense education at VCU, Moscow State University, Norwich University, and MIT. This is actually Richard's second appearance at CAAC, and Richard, welcome back.
Thanks for doing.
On our applicant panel today, we have Barbara Bronson. Barbara is a member of the VITA Project Management Division with 20 years of project management experience. She's a 6 Sigma Master Black Belt and a PMP. She has 11 years experience with Commonwealth of Virginia project and procurement management and oversight. And yes, this is her actual photo. Mohan Seemakurthy has 12 plus years of experience in the information technology industry and a strong background leading on-site and offshore teams. He has expertise in business intelligence dashboards, reporting frameworks, and data warehousing. Then we have Gurinder Preetman. Gurinder has over 16 years of professional experience in software development lifecycle methodologies like Scrum and Scaled Agile, combined with transforming business ideas into conceptual models and software solutions. The last 9 years, he's been working in law enforcement, most of that time in Toronto Police Service. And then this past year, he joined us at VSP as a Scrum Master. And rounding out this panel, we have David Crichton. Now, David's been at VSP for about 5 years on our data warehouse team, using Kanban to manage workload. He's a CSM and CSPO. And he tells me that he has lived in Richmond since 2011 with 1 wife, 1 son, 1 cat, and 2 dogs. So welcome to Barbara, Mohan, Gurinder, and David.
Thank you, Stephen.
On to our first topic of the morning. So we do have a little bit of organization for this morning. Richard and I had some questions or topics that we're going to discuss from the perspective of the hiring manager, of course. Then we're going to turn the mic over to Barbara, Gurinder, Mohan, and David for their perspectives. Along the way, we are going to ask you, the audience, for your perspectives as well. Before we get any further, are there any questions? If not, well, Richard, let's get started talking about the Agile job posting. For our first question this morning, kind of an obvious start, is there such a thing as an Agile job posting?
Yeah, of course.
Otherwise, we're not talking very long, yes.
Exactly. In my frame of reference, I'm going to say Agile methodologies, right? Yes, you'll see a job posting. You'll see them asking primarily in the in the private sector for software development. But I think we in the state look at it slightly differently, right? Specifically at VITA. And what I've seen is flexibility, collaboration, customer feedback, iterative progress. And you'll see this woven throughout. And there's a couple of terms we'll talk about later. Yes, we'll ask for Scrum or Kanban, but sometimes, in between Agile and Waterfall, you get fast water or Wagile or whatever phrase you want to use, sort of a blend of the two. But you're looking for professionals with these type of skills, right? The adaptability, the teamwork, the customer-centric approaches in their operations. And you'll see these postings to find candidates who can thrive in these organizations. We are not, a waterfall state. Things happen very quickly. So we are trying to find out people who can work in that dynamic environment. You talk about the mercurial calendar, right? You respond to customer needs, something near and dear to my heart, but also market changes. Watch what the General Assembly is going to give to us, gift to us here shortly, good or bad, and we're going to have to respond to it. So yeah, I think there are Agile job postings in that respect.
Okay. Incidentally, I love the phrase fast water. I'm going to start calling one of my teams a whitewater team. I don't know. All right, so given that, what do you think some words or phrases are that should be included in a job posting that would provide clues that you're hiring for an Agile environment, other than saying, I'm looking for a Scrum Master?
Yeah. I think if you see Agile methodologies, product owner, Agile coach, Scrum Master, that's the 2x4, right? That's going to get you. But if you hear anything sprint or iterative, that's a clear sign that we are not waterfall, right? We are not, a calendar approach. We're looking at what we can perform, but you'll see throughout the Commonwealth, cross-functional teams. I think that's it. Continuous improvement. I think that's high on the, and customer centricity. I know a lot of people from my organization are listening. So definitely that type of focus. Even if you hear collaborative environment, I think that really adds into it. And if you say anything about value delivery or outcome delivery, I really think those are the things that you're going to apply that Agile mindset and those skill sets. So those are the words I would look for.
Yeah. I think I'd like to dig into that last phrase just a little bit, because just saying value delivery doesn't sound controversial, right? And it doesn't sound nouveau. I would suspect that anybody on a waterfall project would say they want to be able to deliver value. So how is the phrase value delivery a clue in this context?
And I'll tell you something I'm wrestling with right now. One of my areas, the project management division, is focused on oversight and governance, right? Code-driven, thou shall do the oversight and governance. Tell me how you're going to perform. But realistically, that form of strict control doesn't drive any sort of outcomes, and it doesn't drive value per se for the business. Yes, you're protecting the Commonwealth from risk in this narrow focus. But when I say, can we create a process that incentivizes the behaviors we want to see and drive the outcomes and value for the Commonwealth? So then I really start talking, how do you drive value for the 67 lines of business that roll into VITA, the way we look at it, individual agencies? How do you drive business focused, IT related outcomes value for that business for the money that they're expending? That's a real question we're wrestling with. And we talk about outcome delivery and the value that our actions drive.
Excellent. Thank you.
I expect comments on that one.
So what are the key phrases? You mentioned Scrum Master, developers, the 2x4. So what are the phrases then that we're putting in the job posting when we're looking for those specific Agile roles?
Sure. If I'm talking from the different perspectives, if I want a Scrum Master, I want to see things like transformational or servant leadership. I think that might be good. Facilitator. I want to see coaching. I want to see removal of obstacles or impediments. I think those phrases go in there. Specifically, team collaboration, continuous improvement, and a framework delivery. I think those are the type of things. I can jump down on any one of those, but those are the type of things that I would start to think as a Scrum Master from that perspective, what I'd like to see or what I would want to include in there.
So I think that there are a lot of folks who might think of the Scrum Master in terms of making sure that the Scrum team is attending all of the events. Where does continuous improvement fit into that?
Continuous improvement will roll right across the board. If you're guiding teams, and I'm just thinking through this, if you're guiding teams through the practice of retrospectives, right? You're looking at these. That continuous improvement isn't strange for waterfall, but hey, pause at the end of one of your sprints and incorporate that in. What Agile does much better than waterfall is, what did we learn? How do we improve? And then how do you add that through the organization? The communication is key, but that whole retrospective aspect of Agile is just, it's phenomenal in what it can impart to an organization if implemented properly.
Always the key, right?
Yeah, big if.
So is it possible to hire a product owner from outside your organization?
I can, Stephen. If I were to just pause for a second, I didn't hit the other ones, the developer or product owner. Do you want me to run down those on the last
Sure.
one? Because at a higher level, like developer, and I don't see much of this, and I'd love to hear some comments. I do want that, collaborative development. I do want test-driven sort of development or end goal in mind, right? I want to test it and ensure that it works, and if it doesn't, fail fast, then adapt and retry. I want to see continuous integration, and I want to see those development practices spread across, right? Refactoring, simple design, collective code ownership, if you're really talking tech level. But specifically at the developer, it's that adaptability, right? How can you take that, what you're working on, test it, and emphasize the need for change in a product to meet requirements or technologies as things change? As a product owner, looking at a little bit more, maybe there's backlog management, maybe that's stakeholder collaboration. That's the value maximization. How do we make this even better? That's where the customer focus fits in. That vision and strategy, that sort of vision of where we're going. You hear that across waterfall as well. But how do you bring it here with specific Agile methodologies to adapt process and enhance the team effectiveness?
Sure.
Just wide open thoughts there.
Yeah. I'd like to pick up on the developer thoughts as well. I think there's a real mind shift between the developer as the Lone Ranger, as the superhero who comes in to save the day, the guy who thinks of himself as the smartest person in the room, who knows how to do the job that they know how to do and don't really want to share. They don't want to work with other folks because they know how to do it best. And that's antithetical to what we're trying to accomplish with the development team as the Magnificent Seven, to continue my Western motif. So from the Lone Ranger to the Magnificent Seven, you've got a team of experts in different things, but who work together to build something of value for a customer. And there's a real mind shift there that a lot of developers struggle with. It's hard to go from I can do this myself to sit down next to me and point out where I've misnamed the variable, you know.
That's a great perspective. Yeah. Yeah. That Lone Ranger approach doesn't work in a collaborative team environment.
So on to the next one. Is it possible to hire a product owner from outside the organization?
I'm going to take this position. Yes. I think it's entirely, excuse me, possible. And here's why. I don't think I'm trying to say I know the organization. I think the Agile methodology and framework gives you the ability to plug and play, excuse the expression, widgets into what you do in order to deliver value and maximize outcomes. So if you have a deep understanding of Agile Scrum methodologies, if you understand market back research, customer insight, private sector, if you do it from the state and understand citizen reaction and agency focus, if you have stakeholder management skills, if you think about strategic thinking at a higher level, decision making ability, experience in product management, none of this is intrinsic to one business, one agency, or one company, and it's truly applicable in everywhere else. If you go to technical understanding, you get a little bit more specific, but if you go at the framework of adaptive and agile learning or learning agility, if you're focused on the customer, all of those wrap in and say, yeah, if you have those type of skills and those abilities, then that directly applies to pick your agency, pick your profession, pick your corporation that wants to deliver value to their customers.
I think from my perspective here, there's another mind shift that's required, but not in IT. Actually, it's in the business, if you will, in the customer side of the equation, because that's where the product owner is supposed to live. And what we would be asking would be for a customer division to go out and hire someone that you're going to give the reins of your product to, right? Because the product owner has the authority to make decisions about where that product's going to go and what it's going to be able to do, and how quickly it's going to be able to get there. So there is on the customer hiring side of that role, you're looking for somebody you want them to be able to say, here's my product, learn it well enough that I can give it to you, and trust that you're going to make the right decisions for us, because that's what it takes as a product owner.
And I think what you're highlighting is key when we get into subsequent discussions about EWP and what should go in there and how do you craft that, as well as what should I be looking for. That's when you're taking that leap. Are you asking the right questions? Do you have a we'll probably talk about it later. Do you have a rote format of questions that you always ask every individual, or does it change based on the role and the current need? I think that's where you're really driving. Can the person do the work? And what you're trying to determine is, hey, do you have these type of skill sets, tools in your arsenal to deliver? I think that, yeah, I'm in alignment with you.
We have an interesting comment in the chat. Nicholas from DWR, do you want to expound, or do you give some feedback to our panelists on this area? I love your comment.
Yeah, I've been incognito a while. Kind of nice to be back. There we go. Get the mic in front of my face.
Perfect.
Oh, let me do that part too. Thanks y'all for putting this on. This is really a good info, and I was like just pointing out that if you're the manager, if you're the supervisor of the position, direct reports, EWPs, you get to write, right? So put it in there. I mean, I've yet to see HR resist our technical requirements for the jobs. I mean, they usually just kind of leave that stuff to us. So we put it in there and they get evaluated on it. So if they, if they're missing the meetings or not participating in the meetings, or they're, there's accountability in their performance measurements. So they've got to do it from that standpoint. But then the nice part of it is that's the carrot, that's kind of the stick. But the carrot is, when they participate in it, it's, it feels kind of corny to talk in terms of user stories, and it feels kind of weird to have a discovery meeting with somebody and make them answer a question. This is our mission, and this is how this fits into our mission. And it's like, well, that's really clunky. Why do we do that? And it's like, then 15 minutes after that clunky, why we have too many meetings and there's all this work we're doing extra. It's like, well, can't we just get to work and we know what we got to do. Let's just do it. And it's like, no, we're going to have this, we're going to participate in this process. So we're not going to do your work. It's like, we need to define what you're going to do. We're not trying to be obtuse. We're simply pointing out the fact that you could just say, hey, we want this thing. And we're measuring our team on their ability to tease what that thing really is. We just recently had somebody tell us that they needed this big application and all this stuff. We're going to have to, this is 6 months to a year or 2 years. How long is this going to take to build? How many people do we have to go to contractors? And it's like, once we finally figured out what they really wanted, it basically turned out to be a data entry interface, and they were going to do their own R studio, R Shiny reports based on CSV files we're going to throw up on the internet, on a network drive, and they just pull them down and use R. And it took us a month, and they were done, and now they're using it. And it was more than they ever hoped for being able to have, and it's 10 times better than the crap piece of tool that we were trying to replace. And yet it was that mechanism that they didn't, because they went through that whole thing. Oh God, as a so-and-so, I want to so-and-so, so I can so-and-so. And then they were going through all that, and we're building it all out. And there's like, this is so hokey. And then, like I said, 15 minutes into it, they're going, oh, I didn't think about that. Yeah. How will we do reports? What will be that format? And then as the team starts seeing success in that model, because I don't think it's our job to force people to do it. It's an accountability to say you're going to try, and if you see the success, let's capture it. And if something's a waste of time, we'll stop. And just that psychological safety to do it. But it's like, it's definitely in their EWP elements. We're going through this recruiting process, and when I first started asking the question 3-4 years ago, answer was always no. They'd never seen Agile, and then the last 2 years, more and more people who are applying for the jobs are saying, yeah, because we asked the question, the 7 or 8 interview questions are always going to be something about Agile. And yeah, I was in an Agile team. I used Jira, or I used Teams, or I used, there's whatever mechanism they were using to kind of guide that process and the language they wanted to speak. So.
That's great.
So
Awesome.
Nicholas, thanks very much. Yeah, I think the tie-in here is that the job posting typically is built from the EWP. so having
Exactly.
the EWP right, and we'll talk about the EWP later this morning. But that's a real important foundational piece to understand. You get the EWP right, you're more likely to get the job posting right as well. Jennifer, another comment on delivering customer value. Jennifer, you want to say that stuff out loud?
Yes. Well, I'm actually standing up a process improvement team within VSP in CGIS, and looking towards expanding our team. We've put a lot of the things that you've mentioned into our EWP as far as teams being collaborative. We do a lot of things in iterations and using sprints, and we're all actually Six Sigma yellow belts. So part of our purpose is promoting continuous improvement within the CGIS division. And this delivering customer value terminology that you just mentioned just like hit with me, because that's what we're here for. We're here to help the processes within CGIS deliver customer value. And putting that into an EWP, putting that into the posting is going to give me people that are dedicated to doing that. And I just thought that was a great idea. And I don't know why I didn't think of it to begin with, but
that's why we have these conferences. And I mean, just excuse me, spreading the information, the ideas. I love your focus right on delivering that value to the customer, and then having that idea and wrapping it in, even at Vita, where we talk a lot long and hard about customers because we have services and products that we deliver. But if you stop for a second, and start looking around, you define that customer term differently. It's who consumes the information that your team generates. That might be an internal customer. And if you start thinking that you're actually serving another part of your agency to give them what they need in the time that they need it so that they can deliver value further on, you start really looking around as hold on, the head of the agency is a customer, the sibling team is a customer. Obviously think about DMV for a second and all their customer service things. It's not just the state is a customer and the citizens are a customer, but it's all of the hooks into that system of every officer that's using the system or the courts. I mean, it's amazing when you start to think how many, and I'm using air quotes here, customers you really support. So it's really expands what you do, and then how you think waterfall for a second. And you say stakeholders, but same thing here. How do you serve those customers? It's a neat topic.
Yeah. So Richard, you and I have chatted on long enough that we are out of time for our segment. So I think we'll probably catch those last two questions as we go through the other topics this morning. But now it is time for the applicant's perspective. So I'm going to turn this over to Barbara and the team.
Hey, thanks. So it was really interesting listening to you guys talk, and I'm like really excited about our applicant group. I mean, we've got a developer with Mohan, we've got a Scrum Master with Gunder, we've got a business analyst. I'm just a project manager. So let's start out with you, Mohan. As a developer, when you're looking for a position, what steps do you take to prepare for your job search? How do you go out starting that process?
Mohan, you're muted.
Are you with me? I was like, oh no, are you with me?
So the whole time I was in
Sorry.
turn off, so I just turned down. So the concept for today is like applicant job search. So the disclaimer is, so you don't need to try really hard, you will get a job. So the disclaimer is you need to follow the disclaimer. We have 6 great techniques when an applicant do the job search for a Scrum Master. So the 6 great techniques, the first great technique is to have a strong Agile certification. So when you visit the website www.scrumalliance.org, there are 2 certifications majorly. One is the Certified Scrum Master. The another one is Advanced Certified Scrum Master. So these 2 are the 2 most people are certified with. So build up a resume with strong certification is the first great technique. And the second great technique is to have a network by linking with the Scrum Master webinars and the meetup communities. And in this scenario, your opportunity don't show right away. When the company opens up the position, that particular person will call you or try to email you, and you can get together and get a job. Is a second great technique by network and linking. The third great technique is by referral. So in this case, you already know the person and you already know the company. And this is mostly a win-win situation that when an opportunity shows up in the company, your friend or a colleague, they will refer you and you will get this job. So this is it's a most win-win situation. 100% it's a win. So yeah, this is the third great technique. The fourth technique is you try really hard on career job fairs, company portals, and government websites. So you have a resume, you start applying like Indeed, Dice, and other career portals. You apply for the position, and if your resume is selected, and you will get an interview call and you crack it. So that is the fourth great technique, and it's most commonly used. And going to the next is the fifth great technique is by cold calling. So what I mean by that is when it is a startup company and they don't really have any website or anything like that, but you know the company will going to grow, then you can call the company and email the company with your resume. If opportunity shows up, please email. They're gonna call you back and apply for a position. This is like a cold calling. And the sixth and the final great technique is temporary contracts and internships. So you might not get a full-time position right away, but you can apply for a temporary contract for 6 to 1 year. And later, when your performance is good, so later company will offer you convert into a full-time position is the sixth grade technique. And if you are a freshman from a graduate school and you can look for an internship in the company, you can apply for an internship. And later after 6 to 1 year, they can convert to a full-time position. So these are the most commonly 6 great techniques that we use on a day-to-day scale to, if you really try really hard on these great techniques, you will definitely get a job. The bottom line that I'm going to end up is, so you need to have a lot of patience in order to apply for a job. So most of the opportunities will show up lately. So you need to have a little patience and remember to leave your company in a respectful manner and within like 2 weeks notice. Sometimes, and the third thing to remember is like sometimes your career might not be used in the current projects. And so if you see Scrum Master is like, it's newly introduced. Before 10 years, Scrum Master is not there. After 10 years, we don't know Scrum Master will be not there, but it can be transformed into any other new technology or a new career. So you need to constantly update your skills with the current market condition, what the client is looking for, and you can fit in definitely. And the lastly is like doing the performance duties. The company has its own values and employee has its own values, and you can do your value duties in the company. So with that, I'm closing the session. These are the techniques that if you really try really hard on these techniques, and you will definitely get a job.
That
Yeah,
is
over to you.
very thorough. Thank you, Mohan. Let's try another question. So when you're looking for positions, Dave, what is your ideal position in a job posting? What are you looking for in a new position? What are the words that you look for in this? What is it?
Thanks, Barbara, and good morning, everyone. Really enjoying the session so far. As far as looking at a job description, for me personally, I'm more interested in the company culture. I'm someone who's looking for a team member position rather than a specific Scrum Master or product owner position. I would like to see specific job requirements and duties are listed rather than a general catch-all job posting. As Nick Minetti mentioned, I'm looking for indications that the hiring manager has a significant say in the job description. To me, that speaks to the management culture. If the manager is able to significantly influence the job description, then the culture is probably one where the staff and the lower level managers have input and influence, and that's something that's important to me. It also helps determine if they have pure Scrum positions rather than duties tacked on to a super achiever's regular duties. I'm familiar with VSP and CGIS, and Jennifer Glass particularly is a super achiever, and they threw them into PO roles, which is great. They have all the knowledge of the applications and everything else, but it took time for the business to realize that a PO position requires a lot of focus for the application team. They have to limit their outside duties. So to me, if they are allowing POs to focus on the Agile team, then I've lost my train of thought now. It just allows them to, tells me that the company is transitioning into a more agile framework, which is a great thing.
Do you have any keywords that you look for in the postings when you're looking?
I don't really. And of course, all postings are different. And I haven't looked at posts recently, within the last 5 years anyway. Back when there wasn't a whole lot of pure Scrum positions or anything specifically mentioning Agile. Generally, as already been said, they're more generic phrases. Must be flexible and be able to work with multiple team members and, all the agile keywords.
Right.
But no,
So-
there's nothing specific.
Okay. So same question to you, Gunder. What is your ideal posting? What do you look for in your postings for a Scrum Master? Because you are our Scrum Master on this panel. Let us know.
Definitely. Good morning, everyone. So yeah, as I would say, there are 4 to 5 criteria that I will focus on in order to have a good job posting. There should have a clear job title, which states that it could attract the right candidate for that. The job description already, which was discussed earlier, folks have and peers are discussing. So they should provide detailed overview of the role and its responsibilities and objectives and anything related to that specific project. So company overview, you should have a insight of the company mission, its values and workplace environment related. You can have a look onto that piece, and I'll see that job posting should include the qualifications and requirement, clearly outline the required skill, experience, education, and certification necessary for that particular role and position. And of course, benefits and perks, very important for all of us. So, so I would say, especially related to our healthcare, our retirement plans, vacations, flexibility of working arrangements, and especially professional development opportunities we have. And lastly, I would say this job posting should be SEO optimized, like it should increase the visibility and reach to the broader audience so that we could get a right candidate for that position and we get good people to apply for.
Great. So I think you opened a door here for an interesting question. Since we're post-pandemic, there was obviously we were all remote for a very long time, and now we're kind of hybrid. And anyone, even the audience, when you're looking at postings, how important is remote to you? Is that a big factor in your job search when you're looking for a job posting? Anyone on the panel and anybody in the audience want to weigh in on that one? Because it's a big thing right now. I know I enjoy my remote time, even though I'm partially in the office. We're in a hybrid situation here at Vita. So the remote helps. You schedule your appointments on your Mondays and things like that. What about you? How about you, Mohan?
Yes. For a remote job, there are 2 perspectives of the remote job. One is the employee perspective. So if an employee health is not good, and if the family member of the employee is not good, and employee needs to stay in home, and so these are the different factors that he's looking for a remote job based upon his health factors, or if he's he's out of other state and he cannot commute to the office. So these are the different factors that an employee is looking for a remote position. The second is the company's perspective. When company will provide remote, it's about the overall roadmap of the company. There are different projects who are meant to be for different purpose. Some production support projects, they need to be onshore. And development projects, they can be offshore. They can work remotely. So this is like one perspective. And some environmental factors. If you 2 years back, we have COVID and everyone is remote at that time. So, and this is one of the factors. If it is a great tornado, it's having a heavy rainfall. So some of the environment factors that affects commute to the office. So at that time, company will provide a remote opportunity. And in this case, I would like to explain one scenario which happened to me in my past company. So when the COVID had hit, so a company have provided a remote job for 2 years. And after 2 years, they want all the employees to come back. And there is a strong pushback from all the employees to not to come to office. So at that time, they have a challenge all the management to get all. They have made not one day in the office, and that one day they are providing you free meals and free lunches and get-togethers and everything, and they slowly make it 2 days and two days to lunch, and they're giving you food coupons to go all around the stores. So these are the, they make their employees, make it easy for them to come to office, and now it is like 4 days in office with no once they feel comfortable and they're good with it. This is one of the challenge that at that time they faced. I would like to add this to the remote job.
Okay, so we've got some great feedback. Thank you, Susan. It's saying that she's finding that it's very important to potential candidates. And then Nicholas gave us watching out as the hiring manager using remote in your job descriptions, because you might get people who are only wanting to be full remote and not wanting to come in. So
Yeah.
Richard or Stephen, how about you, Richard? How do you feel about the remote work? Because you're a hiring manager. How much do you need us? How's hybrid working for you at Vita?
I'm gonna take my personal opinions out now.
Thank you.
Yeah. The
I know you.
administration is setting the tone, right? And they are directing many of the executive branch agencies to respond. Personally, I think that if we look at COVID, have we not learned something from investing in the tools and methodologies on how to adapt and execute confidently in a hybrid environment? And I'm not looking for days and I'm not looking for things, but I would be super frustrated. Well, I was when I, worked with the Marines and you were required to sit behind your monitor at your assigned location from 2. And you would pull out your hair thinking, I have nothing to do. I could be doing so much more. Conversely, I see people come to Vita and other locations when I visit, and they're on Zoom calls with their team. Now, coming to the office and being on a Zoom call also isn't the best way to do it. If you zoom back to a higher level, can we come to a way where we can clearly communicate, where we can adapt and execute efficiently? We can share that information. And I think that it happens differently at different levels. If you're working with customers, if Bob, for example, if the COV-CIO needs to reach out and talk to customers, he needs me on a very short leash. And that can happen at 10 o'clock at night, or it can happen all day at the office. Does that mean that a developer needs to have that same role and responsibility of sitting behind a desk in a cubicle or an office? And I don't think it does. And I think, the pendulum went one way with COVID. We've swung almost all the way to the other, where we're getting back down to 1 and almost no days of telework. I think there's a fair balance midway through. I'd love to hear other thoughts.
Yeah.
So
I have another perspective on that. It's also, yes, as a hiring manager, I think it is very important to spell out what our remote schedule is like, because sometimes you do get folks, if it's not in the job description, they do come in and they're like, oh, we need to come in 5 days a week. And then they just, and then you're back into the whole process again, which takes months. And it's a lot of, we're just wasting time and effort, right? And the other perspective that, I've not seen it happen yet, but I also fear that with all of the vendor management that we're doing right now with the state, and with the administrative's push for people to be on site, you do have, especially when we're looking for contractors, there is so much remote work out there in the private sector. And they come to the state and you have folks who have to come in 4 days or 5 days a week. And they would want to take up jobs with other vendors that we are partnered with who are pretty much all remote. And there's another risk that we're losing a contract employee working for the state versus going and working for a vendor whom we pay for. So we do have that risk as well.
Okay, so it's great. It looks like I found a great topic to ask a random question. And I think we're getting really close to break time. Is that right, Stephen?
That is correct.
Okay.
Yeah, we should have asked your question about 15 minutes ago, then we could have gotten through all of that stuff. But yeah, it is now we've come to the end of our time, and as a matter of fact, we're going to skip over our last little bit of something here and go to break. We're going to take 5 minutes here, and then we will see you all back at 10 o'clock. Welcome back, everyone. We're going to move on to the second part of our morning and talk about the Agile interview. And for this segment, we're going to have the applicant's perspective first. So Barbara, take it away.
All right, thanks. Okay, so we're going to talk about interviews and what are we looking for? How are we conducting our interviews? How do we react and act in our interviews? So Gunder, how do you prepare for an interview or determine if you want to work for the company?
Yeah, so I would focus on 4 to 5 things over here. Let's first of all, we need to learn everything we can about that open position, like before applying, before you can show for an interview, and you'd be great. You need to know that what you are looking for, and most of the organizations have laid exactly what they want in an applicant in a job posting. So you go back to that description, you have a look, read it, and before you apply, make sure you have all the skills and experience they are emphasizing on. So this is one thing. Secondly, know the company inside out, familiarize with its history, its values, missions. Try reaching out if that company has some you can learn more from their social media, LinkedIn, and other learn about the company as much as you can before while you are preparing for the interview session. Then I would say definitely use a STAR methodology when you are interviewing and you are answering questions to the interview. So explain a situation, the task, action, and result. So lay a scenario where you have enough details that the interview will understand, and you speak around that. So task. So talk about what is there in that role in that particular situation. Then it come to the action. Discuss what you did and why. What was your action over there? And then definitely the final is results. Tell your interview about the outcome and what you have learned from there. And I would say do prepare for at least 2 to 3 questions to ask from the interviewer. For example, how's the organization culture? How are you measuring the success for this particular role? How big the team is where you'll be working. So all kind of this would definitely help the interview that you are really willing for those positions, and it will you will be a right candidate for a hire.
Great. How about you, Dave? What are you looking for? How do you determine if you want to work for a company? Yeah, and you're on mute, hon.
Thank you.
Is anybody keeping score? That's only twice so far. So.
Yeah. How do I determine if the company's a good fit? Well, it's already been mentioned. Try to identify the organization needs. What I learned about in my research provides fodder for my answers to interview questions and questions that I ask the interviewers. It demonstrates to them my interest in the position and the direction of the company. So when I'm looking for news about product launches or recent management changes, as well as their competitors and how their competitors focus in one direction and maybe this company focuses in another. So just gathering information about the organization, I think helps me in the interview. That's the big thing. I prefer long-term positions. So I'm looking at the job description and the interview to see if they're looking for temporary assistance as maybe a big initiative, kind of a contract position, or does the posting mention a project, or maybe it's a long-term position. I prefer the long-term position. If I'm focused on agile positions as a Scrum Master or a PO, has the organization, have they sponsored any agile events like this conference? If they are, they're definitely engaged. Are they looking for a specific agile position? I was happy to hear that Vita is focused on those. That's great. I haven't been in the market, so I haven't seen a whole lot of specific agile job descriptions or interviews. I look for the company's technology. What kind of technology are they using? What are they mentioning? This to me speaks of the company environment again. Are they using old hardware and software technology? Are they jumping to the newest technology, or are they cautiously advancing? Personally, I'm more of a slow-paced kind of person, so I prefer that. Company reviews. Of course, you're going to seek out former employees, Glassdoor, et cetera, and reach out to them for one-on-one discussions. So those are pretty much how I gear up for interviews and research companies, et cetera.
Yeah, I find that the market in Richmond is kind of small and everybody knows somebody somewhere. So, there's always somebody that you can ask about, hey, what's it like here? And what's the turnover like? So if I can figure out what the turnover is like, if they're constantly posting, does that indicate there's some sort of a cultural issue, some sort of issue with the way that they're managing? So those are the kind of things that I look for. Dave, when you're actually get into it and you're interviewing and all of that, how do you decide if that company is a good fit for you?
Again, I go back to the environment, trying to determine whether they are progressive, how fast they progress, what kind of influence the management and the staff have. The staff on the ground are going to see all the little issues, and personally, I want to know that I can take this to my manager and it gets addressed or at least communicated up the chain. So as far as interview questions, I would say, and I'll throw something out there. I would ask, I don't know, trying to think off the top of my head doesn't work for me. So
that's okay. Let's run with that. So if you're in interviewing, we're going to ask questions. I mean, everyone expects the interviewee to have some sort of questions. What are those questions do you ask the interviewers, and why are those questions? For me, I tend to ask about culture. I've been caught off guard as a person interviewing when somebody asked me about the culture and I wasn't quite ready to describe like the pockets of culture in the organization. But so I do always ask about what's the culture here like? What does it feel like to work in this group? Ask about the person who was here before me. What happened? How is this position open? Why are we hiring for this position right now? So panel, any one of you, what other questions do you think or what do you ask?
So one of the questions I could ask, and trying to gauge how well the organization is in their agile journey, where they are, is asking about the POs. I think I mentioned this earlier. Do they focus exclusively on their product, or is this just part of their duties? Maybe they're a manager and over one of the systems, and they know a lot about the system, so now they're the PO for the application team. It tells me how committed or mature the org is into the Agile Scrum environment.
So,
Pardon me.
Yeah. Hey, Tim,
Yeah.
Barbara, let's jump
I
to
was
one of
gonna go there.
our commenters. Thank you. Tim, you have a pretty involved comment that you've typed out. Could you talk to that some?
Sure. And yeah, sorry for that, but it's if I'm interviewing for a position, say at VSP perhaps, I value the Agile principles, right? The 12 principles which we've seen everywhere. And if and I've got them listed there, and I can give you a story probably about each one of those. But if I'm talking to the interviewer and they're like, yes, 40-hour week, sustained development. No, we work our guys hard. Continuous improvement. Yeah, with the retro, we find that is, well, Tim, that's what's that? What, over 1% of our time during the sprint? We don't have time for that. We want our guys hands to keyboard. I'm going to quickly offer a no to position at somewhere like that if they can't even recognize the Agile values or the principles.
That's great.
Probably my biggest no or a quick answer. If I get one question, I ask if they follow any empirical processes. Do y'all experiment here? Do you just try things? Paired programming. Some of the DevOps stuff, and they're like, paired programming. How are we going to know if that works? Well, you try. Well, if it doesn't work, then we've wasted that time. It's like, okay, we're done.
So and then you have embrace transparency. That's great. Barbara 1, because I'm Barbara 2. She has in the chat, how does a person win with Agile here? Can you elaborate on that a little bit, Barbara 1?
Funny enough, I ran down to my refrigerator where I had put these on sticky notes over listening to different podcasts, and then I adapted it to Agile. But essentially, you're asking about their culture, but since this is an Agile conference, I threw in the word Agile. But you're saying, how do I win with Agile? So that's gonna, hopefully the interviewers are gonna come back and give examples. Now it's their behavioral interview. Tell me about a time that a person won with Agile, and they might talk about the value of the imperialism, which Tim just said, how they use retrospectives and how that in the industry might, just like, how do I win with Agile in your culture? And the other one is the company's values and Agile values. How do they show up on a daily basis? And so you put the onus back on them. And if they're not able to articulate, it could be a red flag.
That's
anyway,
really, really good.
So jot those down and put those on your refrigerator. Not that we're asking anyone to go and do some interviewing.
Throw them on a sticky note, throw them on the wall. You never know when you need them.
Yeah.
Flipping back to the panel, Gunder, how about you? Do you have any questions that you ask the interviews, and why are those your questions?
Yeah, so as I discussed earlier, definitely I would say that how this role contribute to the overall goals and missions of that of the company. And yes, secondly, for how does this company measure success in this role? So I would say this will I would definitely mention these two questions for while I'm going for an interview.
Okay.
Yeah, Barbara, I'll jump in on that. For me, it's important to find out if the place that I'm going to is going to let me make a difference. Does management listen to opportunities for change, for improvement? Are they willing to reflect on the experience that their employees have day to day, and then adjust and adapt to that? So trying to figure out how much of a voice someone can have when they're joining your agency would be an important one for me.
Okay, that's great. Do we have any more feedback on this topic? I think that is what we have from the applicant perspective here.
Awesome. We are going to move on then to the hiring manager's perspective on the interview. And Richard, so our first question, as an interviewer, how do you gauge Agile experience?
I want to pause really quickly because those comments were spot on, right? An interview is not one way. It's always two ways. And anybody who's ever sat with me knows my questions can be off the wall, and I don't have many of them. It's a discussion and a dialogue going forward. To your point and to your question, right? I've got to assess an understanding, right? Commitment to the cause, to the application, and the ability, the KSA knowledge, skills, and abilities to do that. So how do I gauge it? I definitely want to review work history. I'd love to see that documented somewhere. I'd love to go through, talk about the work history, tell me a little bit, but I want to get past that because it's documented. I want to see behavioral type questions. I want to ask about situations or instances where you had to solve. How would you describe a project? Have you dealt with those type of questions? Can you give me an example where you facilitated team collaboration in an agile setting, something like that? I would like to go to scenario based. I think scenario based is, hey, here's a hypothetical. We've got a whiteboard. You get any inputs, you can ask any questions. Let's work through this problem together and see where headspace and timing fits. Do I need to, test somebody on agile principles and methodology? No. But if I ask questions that makes me think somebody's just talking to agile because of buzzwords or jargon, well, then I might want to lean in a little bit and talk about the manifesto or, the underlying value of agile. Why is this crucial? But what I'm trying to do through the scenario-based and behavioral, again, headspace and timing, military term, but I'm evaluating the agile mindset, that collaboration, flexibility, ability to pivot, turn on a dime. Certifications are always nice, but certifications doesn't mean the appropriate application of the KSA in my environment. It's a good thing to have and it's a basis, but I would say that's how I go back. Feedback from references and other things, that's post interview.
Sure. Yeah. I'm sorry. I think that your comment about certifications is very valuable. Certifications are, CSM is what, a 2-day course now? So I can spend a couple of days in a class and be a level 1 certified Scrum Master, but that pales in comparison to actually being a Scrum Master on a team for a year. There are things that, and I think any of the Scrum Masters on my team would tell you, what you learn in the first 3 weeks with a team is way different from what you learned in the 2 days listening to an instructor. So that experiential evaluation is going to be critical for a successful interview. Let's push that a little further. If your Scrum Master interview was only one question long, what would it be? What would you ask?
All right, so here's how I build it. Right, I want to find that outcome orientation. I want to address the problem solving abilities. I want to evaluate some sort of Scrum or Agile principles, and I want to assess facilitation, right? The ability to manage the dynamics and the collaboration. So it would probably come down to, can you describe, a challenging situation that you as a Scrum Master had to facilitate team dynamics, ensure practices were being followed, and what was that obstacle that you overcame to deliver value? How did, continue on, if I can run on in a sentence, and how did you approach this situation to achieve a successful outcome? Probably run on sentence. I probably put 2 in there.
That's several questions all asked with commas in between them, which is
exactly
that's a rule. I mean, it's
for fun.
It's a technique. Yeah.
One word.
Yeah. So I was going to turn and ask the everybody on the call, how might you approach this? And then Jennifer has already commented. Jennifer, talk to us about your question.
So, actually, this is an interview for the position that I'm currently in. That was for special processing and analytical support section. And the question actually was on a second interview and threw me for a loop because they asked me, a lot of people ask you, name something, some type of failure you've had or some type of challenge that you've had and how did you overcome it? But what he wanted to know was not that I don't fail. He wanted to know that I have failed, that I've accepted the failure and learned from it and figured out what I could do better next time to keep from failing at that project. And I thought that was a very insightful question. It threw me for a loop at the time, but afterwards that it gives you an idea of how individuals address a challenge and how they overcome that challenge and whether or not they learn from it or just dismiss it.
So, since Jennifer took us here, can I elaborate just a second?
Certainly, sir.
I will neither confirm nor deny that Jennifer was asked that question, but my starting position I put in chat. And I will tell you that just a minute ago you asked the question, if you could only ask one question, what is it? To Richard's point earlier, I look for minimum basic qualifications. I'm going to go in that interview. I'm going to know if you're minimally qualified for that position or not. What I want to know about is the intangibles. And if I could only ask one question, it's the question that Jennifer referenced and what I'm looking for specifically. And she's right there, but there's a whole lot packed in the question. And Richard, you of all people will appreciate what I'm about to say. Yes, ma'am, conceded. Richard, you of all people will appreciate what I'm about to say. If I could ask one question, this is it. I tend to start my interviews with this. And here's what I'm really looking for in the question. I'm looking for you to walk in and state where you went wrong. And if you do that, if you accept that responsibility and ownership, that tells me a tremendous amount about you. By contrast, I don't need the other 5 questions on the interview if you fail this one, because your interview ended right there. The minute you start blaming other people and explaining to me why whatever happened was not your responsibility, I know that when I bring you into that team environment, that's likely to be the same outcome and reaction. And that's just not what I look for in my teams. So, there's a lot more behind the question, and that's kind of the mindset.
I have to
And she might have been asked that, okay?
I have to ask, have you ever had somebody tell you they've never failed?
Oh, it's really interesting to see the contortions of people. And the answer to your question directly is no. But I've never had anybody say I've never failed. But again, you really start to see people's colors because, it wasn't, this is the mistake I made. This is what I learned. This is what I could have done different. Jennifer blew the interview out of the water because she came in and she just bore her soul. We asked her a question. She gave us an honest answer. We moved on. It was absolutely phenomenal. By contrast, and I want you all, Richard made a point earlier. And again, I push the intangibles, and this is so key. We had done a first round of interviews for this position. Okay. And the candidate that came out of that, the 3 people on the panel, and I'm talking the candidate that was that won, and I'm putting that in quotes, the interview. The 3 of us on the panel are and 2 of them knew her. We're collectively sitting. She's full of poop.
We're actually from a kid, to be honest.
But we couldn't put our fingers on it. And, we were asking those standard state police questions. Give us an example of, give us a time, performance-based stuff. And what we did very specifically, I stepped back and I said, okay, guys, we're going to do round 2 because none of us believed the candidate that was in the lead. And this was a fascinating interview, but it's a case study as well. We stepped back and this goes with like Richard's dialogue about the person and mine of looking for intangibles. I rewrote the questions, and I'll put my hand on any Bible to this day, and Jennifer can back me up. Those questions were not written to or against any person. Truly, they were not. But they were very specifically questions designed to bring out the intangibles in these people. Are you someone who's dedicated to self-improvement? I'm testing it to what Richard said. Are you that person that's going to be a good teammate? Those are the things my questions are now focusing on. But again, I want to stress they were not written to help or hurt any person on that interview. And Jennifer, if I'm misspeaking, you call me on it right in front of everybody, and it's all good. And so the fascinating thing was at the end of this, Jennifer came in, straightly answered the questions, bore her soul, and just rocked that interview because she didn't try and play games. She answered the questions. By contrast, the lady that we were all uncomfortable with that had outright won the first round of the interview, she was reduced nearly to tears to the point she couldn't even give a presentation at the end of it. Why? Because when we started really digging at those intangibles and looking at the person we were getting, what we found is there weren't a lot of layers behind that onion. So I'll just, I'll share that as an experience and an approach.
Thank you, Chad.
That's it.
So
there's a lot there.
There's a lot there. Andre has, speaking of a lot, put a lot in the chat about culture and mindset questions. One of the things that he said right in the middle of all that, something that Richard quoted, it's critical to ask the interviewer what Agile means for their organization. I would actually say it's critical to ask the interviewee the same question. Mm-hmm. What does Agile mean to you? And that's absolutely a question that I use.
Describe the color, right? Yeah. How do you do it? What's your perception?
Yeah, I totally agree. I was just typing. It was very long, so I decided to just abrupt on that. But I think what's really important to, we're hiring the right people. So in order to select the right people and for people to also be happy in the organization where they work, they just have to align really well about what Agile means. And again, Agile is, fairly new if we look from the Agile Manifesto times. And for many people, it's just, it has been sort of a hype. Let's get certified. Let's get in the game. But if you are on that path, you have to understand it's not an easy path. It's a path of transformation. It's a path of impact. It's a path of servant leadership where Scrum values such as courage are very integral. So having that uncomfortable conversation, as it may seem, with the interviewer, you're absolutely right, asking the person what Agile is for you, what have you done, how maybe have you suffered, or how maybe have you transformed previous organizations that you've been at. That, I think, truly forms the essence of the right human resources that are part of that culture of excellence. So that's how I at least see it.
Yeah, thank you, Andre.
Yeah, hugely salient. I think there's so much to unpack, and Stephen, I don't know your time frame because I could jump on any one of those points and talk for a while. What do you want to do?
We have 10 more minutes in our segment here, so
okay.
let's and I think we're going to get through a lot of this too. So
okay.
The next question may have been superseded by the conversation. Does the question that you would ask a Scrum Master change if you're interviewing for one of the other Agile roles?
Only aspects of it, right? It's continue to describe. I'm reaching for that character, that intangible that I can't see, even reading between the lines on a piece of paper. A developer. How do you adapt to changing technologies, requirements, right? How did you handle the chaos that will be work? And then how did you collaborate? And I think if you go to a product owner, it's how did you balance stakeholder expectations? How did you work with the team to prioritize the product backlog? And how did that prioritization impact the success, right? What are you doing? It's a spin, but based on the individual roles, it's variations of the same question.
Yeah. For a product owner, I think it's important to figure out how well that person can say no. You call it prioritization, but it's also managing inputs from multiple stakeholders and being able to tell somebody we're not going to do that. that just doesn't make sense for where we need to go, and that's a hard conversation for anybody to have.
1,000% aligned with that. At PMD, we're wrestling with changes to how to make this work faster and better, right? How do we roll through? not waterfall, but how do you do agnostic of methodology? How do you make it better? And as we talk about thresholds and limits, which are very much control, and we go back to that driving outcomes, we're talking about how we adapt to change and what are those outcomes that we expect, and are we truly protecting the Commonwealth from the multi-$10 million, $80 million projects, and the 250 or the 50, that's a little bit of risk, but it's not the risk to the Commonwealth that the new version of Cardinal might be, right? At a very astronomically large number. How do you truly protect that? And then exactly what we're talking about, right? How do you drive those outcomes through your ability to adapt to the chaos that comes at you? All right, people are chatting,
Yep. So
yeah, is that interview prep? All right. Does that answer that question? Does anybody have any comments on that? I mean, balancing expectations, trying to look at the facet, right? The impact on success, the impact on outcomes. And as we've been talking about, how do you get to those intangibles, specific experiences, specific kills? How do you deal with those experiences? For anybody who's never failed. I heard that.
No, Richard, it's not that they didn't fail. It's just everybody else's fault that they failed.
Yeah.
Not theirs.
No, how you deal with it. You're right. You're total 100%, sir.
Hey, this is Niaz here. I have a question to Richard. I know you have been in Vita for a long period of time. And how does the PM really fit in Agile world in Vita perspective?
Great question. And if you look at predominantly what we have at the current PM standard, not the future iterations of it, if you read it, you feel a lot of PMP, you feel a lot of waterfall. But in working with the team, realistically, we're talking about three things that budget and accounts need: scope, time, and cost. How you get to those, whether you're planning at the beginning and running through a project in waterfall fashion, and then you realize halfway through, a year into it, requirements changed, and you deal with replanning, or you're going to do an iterative, what can I get done for this iteration, and how many sprints does it take, and those approach, the standard is agnostic on it. We need to hit targets for the Commonwealth. So as PM training, what you will see and what we are discussing is, one, how do we incorporate Agile so that truly it's not heavy waterfall and light Agile, but agnostic of the approach, the methodological approach to deliver project performance for the Commonwealth. How can we build a standard that, I'll say it's inclusive, right, of everybody's approach, that gives the agencies the choice, even if they want to do fast water or a combination of the two. How do you hit it? Just months ago, January, I was watching an Agile approach brief at Vita that was talking about this project, and they had each month delivered with the milestones that they were going to deliver in every month Agile. They might not have that, have that wired down the way they think they have it wired down. right? A little bit of tongue in cheek there. But as we roll, like for the standard out, we don't want to put it into public comment and just say, this is what Vita wants to do. We're actually driving PMB to go out to each of the agencies and get a coalition, if you will, of the willing to poke holes in our theory. How will it affect your organization, the VDOTs that huge budget, huge complexity, multiple projects, and how are they running those? And then how will it affect Jamestown, Yorktown, or compensation board that don't have those budgets? And how do we build not a one size fits all, hurts for DMV, hurts for Jamestown, but how do we tailor these processes to each of the agencies? And we have a couple of ideas we're putting on the board. We're going to roll it out. I know it's not a PMD thing, so I'll get off this quick, Stephen. And it affects everybody, but you'll have a chance to both see the application, how it should affect your agency, and then inclusive on that is setting the standards for training. Not just are you a PM certification, you've gone through the course, but they're actually levels of PM training, and whether that's Scrum Master training and building those up as well, so that and I'll go to, technical competencies, apprentice, journeyman, and master, right? How do you have those more senior levels of PM management so that you don't just get a certification and you're working $1 million project or $10 million project, or with O&M, $80 million project. So there's a lot of stuff in flight. I could probably talk for hours about this. So Stephen, pull me back.
We'll stop you there. And I, for some of the things that have been commented on, I would tell you, if I put on my applicant hat for a moment, it really is important to find out what the hiring agency thinks about what Agile is. The early history of this conference is that we had several agencies describing their Agile transformation and how they do whatever they do that they call Agile today. And we heard half a dozen different variations on what Agile means for an agency, for a group of people. So as an applicant, when you go into an interview and you're looking for, do I fit here? Is this an Agile place for me? Finding out what they really mean by, yeah, we do Scrum, is important, because I have heard sitting in this chair half a dozen, 6 or 8 different agencies talking about their Agile processes, and they're all different. So it's it really is important for you to figure out, as a hiring manager, how do we describe what we do clearly enough so that the applicant can understand it? And then as an applicant, what do I ask? How do I try to parse through the vocabulary that's being thrown at me to understand what's really going on in those team rooms? So. Yeah, I know, it's not easy.
Rote memorization is awesome, right? And go with me on this one. I remember the general orders of a century, right? All to this day, right? Take charge of this post and all government property herein, walk my post in the military. Great. But I don't think about them on a daily basis, right? That's just that rote memorization. And the same thing with the Agile principles in the manifesto, right? Rote memorization is regurgitation of specific information to recall. There's a lot of terms being talked around. But personally, right, and in the way I view things, I prefer individual interactions over processes and tools. I'm sorry, the process says you have to do it this way, fill out this PDF form that used to be a piece of paper with a signature at the bottom. Well, okay, that's 40 years ago. We can do that. Software, over comprehensive documentation, I think was one of those in there. Customer collaboration over contract negotiation, right? Those are the things. And change, responding to change, and rather than rote following a plan, right? Waterfall versus agile.
Yep.
How do you respond to those type of changes and weave those into the conversation? It's not regurgitate them verbatim. That great, wonderful, but how have you applied them? And again, to the questions previously, Captain Rogers said, how have you failed in the application of these, and what did you learn? Yep. And being able to describe that. Yes, clear understanding of roles and responsibilities and sure, different facets of it, but actually sitting down and saying, hey, I could name 7 out of the 12, with all appropriate punctuation. That's not where we need to be. We really need to think is, hey, do you say you're customer centric, or are you really putting yourself in the perspective of a customer on? And I'll use my thing at Vita. We have an outage, and we tell the DMV, hey, the outage is done at 9:30. It was resolved, and we're sounding the all clear. But DMV will turn around and say, yeah, but our systems weren't up until 3 p.m. that day, so it wasn't all clear, and we weren't getting any other feedback from Vita. Nobody was working, right? Did we have their perspective in mind when we said, hey, we're done, we're moving on to the next headache? Are we really customer centric? And it's the culture at Vita, the culture at the Commonwealth, it's changing it. And that's why I find, that's why I find these conferences so important, to spread this knowledge across. So it's not that rote memorization, it's the application.
Yeah, I'm going to, in the last minute that we have for this segment, I'm going to actually skip our last prepared question and jump to one that was asked in the chat by our new CISO, Stephanie Williams-Hayes, who asked, how do we integrate the information security team into this process? And since we're talking about hiring for agile positions, I'm going to let you, Richard, react to that question first. Stephanie, I may ask you for a little more clarification as well.
Sure. And we're wrestling this at VITA with SEC 530 on how it's rolled out in application. And there are some criticalities that the security team deals with, and I'm thinking specifically CSRM here, that do have a methodology, do follow a plan, do set the bar very high. And when I look at the graphs, just running down a rabbit hole for a second, I get the distinct impression from listening to Mike Watson and his teams that, hey, we fell short of expectations during COVID, and rightly so. And the bar has continued to fall through 21 and 22. Now, 23, he said, now it's time for that inflection point. Now it's time to grab the bootstraps and start pulling up. And what he's doing in 24 is rolling this out. Is it still customer centric? No, he's in a risk and compliance mode. He is trying to get the Commonwealth up. And I'll talk about it from this perspective, because when I listen to, and here's an impression of FBI statistics and Mike Watson talking about our response and listening to higher ed and other agencies talk about their response, I don't know anybody on this call that would say their insurance premiums went down the last 3 to 5 years. Right? Everything's going up. Cost of living's going up. But in this case, VITA, CSRM insurance premiums are going down. So they're bucking the trend and they're doing the right things, right? The question is, how can we work with agencies, that customer centricity, to bring that up to a standard? And that might be a different way that you wanted to go with that question, but that's an application of VITA and CSRM, right? Which is a facet. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on the question.
So your thoughts, me or Stephanie?
Stephanie's thought, right? I'd love to hear yours, David. But are we headed the right direction with that question, or was there a different information security team aspect?
No, I think we're heading in the right direction. From what I see on the VITA side, they're bringing in the ISO more, from projects to procurements to security, because the ISO should be involved in all aspects of the system development lifecycle process. Because at the end of the day, you all are coming to the ADER and the ISO. So it's very important, not only that I have the partnership on the VITA side, I'm new to VSP, so, kind of building that partnership relationship really helps a lot. And it makes sure that, we're procuring and delivering secure technology solutions. So yes, absolutely.
Super salient. If we build a solution and then security says can't implement, we've wasted time, right? So if they're not there foundationally as a stakeholder and a partner from the beginning, the inception of the idea, which we pull all the way back to COV strategic plan for IT, as well as the agency specific IT strategic plans, those frameworks nest like the matryoshkas from Russia, right? The nesting dolls, those nest together very well. We're going to a world that's going to have more AI. So with the executive order that's pushing approvals at the secretariat level for any use of AI, we're starting to see that flow already it's implemented. And not just is it technical, but security has a veto vote in that whole process where you can say, no, Secretary, I do not recommend that this comes into the environment for whatever reason. You're starting to see that. And as we do more transformation, phase 2, and transformations of other agencies that are going to go to cloud and consumption-based models, I think that you're going to see security intrinsically involved both in, disaster recovery, segmenting, and, regaining, performance, as well as how things are actually architected in whatever platform, whether it's OCI, Oracle, AWS, or choose your poison. There's going to be fundamental changes in the next couple of years. I agree with you, man, 1000% that security has to be a veto member at the table on almost every decision.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for that question, Stephanie, and for that answer, Richard. We are now exactly 5 minutes behind, and I don't care. I'm going to go ahead and say we're going to take a 5-minute break, and we will come back not at 10:45, but at 10:50. So see you all in 5 minutes. Okay, everyone, welcome back. We're now going to dive into our third session for the morning, the Agile EWP, which I realize is an acronym that only makes sense if you're an executive agency. And as a matter of fact, we talked to some folks on our planning team who did not know the phrase employee work profile, or EWP. So that's what we're talking about. And we're going to continue with the hiring manager's perspective. So Richard and I are going to dive into this topic. Richard, have I got you back? I'm not hearing Mr. Matthews. So we'll get started, and I'll actually, Barbara, was it Barbara 2? Barbara Bronson, let me pull you into the conversation as a fellow manager. And the question here, first thing first, what's the point of an employee work profile? So, Richard, Barbara. And if not, I'll answer it myself. As an employee, the work profile helps to explain to me what's expected. What is it that I'm supposed to be responsible for? What is it that I'm doing as a manager? Then the question is, how can I write something down that helps to explain to the employee what the expectations are for my section and for the agency as a whole? How do I expect you to spend your time? What are the things that I expect you to be responsible for? And that's where the EWP can really help us drive transformation, can drive us into agile behaviors where we were being held back before. I can tell you, when I started working at VSP, then I had developer EWPs, work profiles, that specified that a developer would be responsible for a specific application, and that was their job. I had a developer whose work profile was built around her being responsible for the sex offender registry, and that's what she did. And trying to move her past, I'm responsible for this application, I do all of the support for it every morning, I'm the one that takes care of application upgrades or enhancements or improvements, getting her to think past, this is my job, to I'm now going to be a member of an agile team, and I've got to be responsible for all of the stuff that goes into being a team member, was an interesting effort and a shift, because the EWP didn't support that. And that's one of the responsibilities that I think we need to dive into as managers. If you're writing an EWP for someone and they're not behaving the way you need them to, then the question is, what does their EWP say about that? I had another fellow who was a developer on my team whose EWP said, you're responsible for the motor vehicle inspection program. If your EWP says you maintain and enhance this program, but it doesn't say you're a part of a collaborative team who works with your customers and who work with each other to get things done, then that's a big shift. That's a challenge that you have to overcome. And that sort of takes me to my next question, which is, how can an EWP help someone be agile? And I'm going to throw that out to the audience and to all of you listening in. How how can an EWP, how can something that is in essence a pretty long involved job description help someone to be agile?
Well, Stephen, just because nobody else is going to jump in here, you incentivize it, by making it a performance-based standard. I'm going to have a little fun with you right now. As we rewrite our EWPs over the next year, take a hint there. I'm looking real forward to the quantitative measures you're going to put in place for that agility.
Well, and here's a spoiler alert. At the end of this segment, we're going to take a look at a couple of sections from some of the EWPs that we have at VSP that describe agile behaviors.
Yes, sir, but I said something very distinct and different, and my language was intentional. I'm looking forward to the quantitative measures
I heard
that you develop around that agility.
Yeah, so quantitative measures is a whole different topic in Agile. I think I know we have had one of the CAC conferences where we discussed metrics all morning long. And there's some real interesting conversation to be had about how you measure what someone's doing in this space. So absolutely.
Yeah, I can talk about the EWP that we made. We added a section before Stephen joining VSP. We had EWPs written in a certain fashion, and the agile transformation was ongoing. And there was some expectancy from the agile team members to behave in certain manner as a team member, which was not clearly written out. So I remember talking to Stephen specifically about that we do have this good to great program and all of the agile practices, but there is nothing in the EWP. There's no section that can measure that, or that can we can set some expectations. So we added a separate section, and I think that was implemented in all of the EWPs across the VSP.
So Michael comments, hopefully that quantitative management is not just stories points, and of course they won't be. But Michael, why is that important?
Because like with any quantitative metric, right, you can game the system, and it's been done over and over and over again. And I'm sure you all are aware of that. I just want to make sure that it's not like an old gold standard that you're looking for. Please don't do that.
Absolutely. Well, and the problem with story points as a metric is that they vary from team to team, and they mean different things for each team that uses them. So.
Yeah. Hey, this is Barbara P. So I'm number 2, but if my maiden name was a B, maybe I'm number 1. But with that said, just as whatever type of performance you have, whether it's called an EWP, just balancing the quantitative, the measurable, with the qualitative, the more subjective, makes it a more equal balance for somebody who's trying to grade you or assess you on, in this case, we're talking about Agile. You could say it overall, but even specifically Agile. So I think it's a win-win, because where the qualitative, again, there's some subjectivity to it. The quantitative, you can't really argue. Of course, like you said, the challenge is making sure that those quantitative goals are achievable and are not gameable. But I think it's a win-win for both sides, both the employee and the employer.
Well, yeah, quantitative measures bring clarity where the subjective stuff is always arguable, right?
And Stephen, you just nailed my concern, and then I'm going to jump off. As a manager, remember, yes, I'm all for the mixture of qualitative and quantitative, but at the end of the day, as a manager, if I have a underperforming employee or a group of underperforming employees, and I've got to go through the state grievance process, and I'm going to have a heck of a lot easier time on quantitative than I am qualitative. And that's going to be the struggle a manager is going to have every time. But hey, Stephen, great job. Absolutely amazing what you put together and the level of instruction this morning. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Can that go on my EWP?
I think it's already there. Now we can talk about the exceptional contributor forms that need to come with it for everything you've done.
Thank you, sir. Next question is, can or should an EWP encourage agile thought and behavior for someone who is in a non-Scrum or non-Agile team role? And if so, what would that look like?
As a this is Dave, as a Agile team member, particularly at VSP, I would hope that the EWP would encourage non-Scrum roles to be more agile. And the reason I say that is it's kind of hard for me, being a Kanban or Scrum employee, to perform the events, to engage the team, if they are not encouraged to do the same thing, right?
Sure. Well, and David, your point's absolutely well taken. In our section, the non-Scrum or non-team roles are few and far between, but they certainly do exist. And the ones that most directly impact you, of course, are the supervisors. The supervisors are not Scrum roles, and they're not Agile team roles. They have all of those folks reporting to them. So if the supervisor's EWP does not encourage the supervisor to be thinking agilely, to be behaving in those ways, and to be looking for those behaviors in their team members, then that can create problems all throughout the whole organization. So my feeling is that agile thought and behavior is not tied to a Scrum role or an agile team role. It's a way of thinking about and solving problems that's not related to the team that you're part of. It's just how you think about stuff.
Right. Part of that organizational environment, agile environment. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's
Well,
how, yes, I'm sorry.
no, it's okay. So if your organization is going to be agile, I mean, you do most of your work in an agile fashion. Do you expect that the EWPs would have the agile values and principles in them for everyone, even if they're not in that kind of a role? Is that how you kind of bond the whole agency together, by having those things in there, maybe?
I would tell you that the agile principles, and you, like I said, you'll see an example of this for some of our folks. Those agile principles are listed, but not for everyone. And that's some of that style, but it's and some of it's probably follow through as well, frankly. Welcome back, Richard.
Sorry about that, sir.
Not a problem. So we are another, I think, 5 minutes or so, 10 minutes into this conversation. The next question we have is, what does an agile development plan need to include? And this question came up specifically in conversation that Richard and I had ahead of this conference. So I'm glad you're back for this question.
It's a great question, and I caught the tail end of that, and I'm sorry I missed the first two. If you have a development plan for Agile, right, and I'll allude to what I was talking about earlier, is not one certification and done, lifetime learning, sure, but essentially if somebody who hasn't done Agile starts to become, if the apprentice role and certified, you're not going to throw them on every project you have. They're going to be slowly brought in and, if you will, reared in the Agile world. So if you include a development plan, you're going to try to hit these phased, if you will, step goals. So you're going to have those vision and goals on a clear statement that gets you to the next lever. Measurable objectives. It's not just, well, you need to do a couple of things and be good at it, right? You really need to have the specificity of what does it take to reach the next level? How do I get that evaluation right? How does that success happen? How do I measure progress? I think somebody said it in the chat earlier, how do I win in this role? Roadmap's always helpful. I think the roadmap would be key for both understanding as well as feedback. If you include this, it's roles and responsibilities like developing to the next level, product owner, scrum master, development team. How do you progress through each of those levels? Communication plan, is it, I would say that has to be clear in what type of, and we're working through this at Vito, where is your budget in order to achieve these things? Is it something that the agency and the COV are going to invest in, or is this an initial gain qualifications and then grow in that environment?
And that, Richard, kind of feeds into the next question, which is, can we, as part of those development plans, actually spell out or create career progression that is agile in nature? What does that mean?
We're wrestling with this right now, and we had a budget, a budgetary question that comes forward that says, here's the gist of it, that I must have these certifications or do my job. Are you doing that job today? Yes. Do you have those certifications? No. So you sort of go back and forth with HR and budget saying, hey, how do I develop this plan to say exactly how somebody's going to grow? And that brought us to that career progression. And that's exactly where the rubber meets the road is, how do you develop? Yes, I think the EWP should encourage, right, that agile career progression. It's the documentation of ongoing skill development, measurable, specific, achievable, and you reach the next level. And that has to be communicated across the agency and budgeted so that I'd love to get everybody in an area certified this year, but realistically, I might get one or two. And then I might get one or two the next year or two, right? And it's going to be that slow drip process. While people then continue on who got through first, probably because they're senior or talent or skilled, whatever, that can then go on to the next level. I think the EWP documentation it definitely needed, right? The importance of adaptability and job roles and perspectives. Oh, look, my camera froze. My camera does that. You should let me know.
It did freeze. You look great doing it. That pose was awesome.
I'll just freeze like this for a while. My camera does it every once in a while. So sorry about that. Let me know. Lost my train of thought with that one.
Well, and that's fine. We've only got one more minute. So, is DHRM on board? I mean, we're talking about bringing this back to some reality here. I mean, career progression implies promotion, which implies differentiation in roles. So that means, to me, you'd end up with a Scrum Master 1, 2, and 3. Or I mean, I think the vocabulary that you used earlier was apprentice, journeyman, right? So how do we get that codified somewhere?
And we're working through that literally right now, cutting our teeth on it. We are trying to both develop what those steps are. 1, 2, and 3 works. 1, 2, 3, and 4. I think the COV-CIO came up with this mega project. It's actually a high risk project. It's even higher category of your regular projects. But going through, what band does this sit in? And is that promotion a pay increase inside of a band? And then that gets you high, above whatever mean is for that band, so that you start getting closer to the next band. And we're trying to position this between bands so that it's the upper of one and the complete band of the next. So we're trying to work through there. We haven't got the pushback of no, you can't, but we're doing a lot of this qualification is similar into what DHRM already has in their framework. So we're trying to translate what we want to achieve with what exists with DHRM, and then getting agency head to sign off saying, yes, that's our approach right now with DHRM, and I'll let you know how this goes.
Thank you. I want to wrap up your and my conversation on this with just a couple of examples, and this is from a couple of EWPs that we have here at VSP. This is one segment from that appears in all three of my supervisors' EWPs. And I don't know if the format for EWPs is the same across agencies. At VSP, what you say is you have a responsibility. It's going to take X percent of your time to do, and here's some detail about what that means, right? So Agile coaching is a part of all of my supervisors' EWP. I expect them to spend 30% of their time doing it, 30%. And you can see here, just reading down bullets, encourages and adopts Agile principles and practices, Agile adoption impediments and successes are regularly reported. The Agile Center of Excellence is a vital, active community that contributes to the advancement of agility in the division and the agency. Development plans are created and carried out for each Agile team. That's development plans, right? All of Agile teams follow defined policies and procedures and create appropriate artifacts for every project. Just for you, Richard. But my point here is, as a way to help drive transformation and drive culture, you make this stuff important for your supervisors, for your supervisory team, so that you've got folks other than me thinking about how do we do this day to day in the section and in the agency. Then we have from a developer's EWP, a section called Agile Practice, 15% of my developers' time. And that whole second column there, that's the 4 Agile principles: individuals and interactions, working product, customer collaboration, processes should be responsive to change and agency demands. And then you've got all of this detail about what that means. So every one of our Java developers has this section. Every one of our testers has this section in their EWP. So it's important to call out specifically in an EWP, I expect you to be thinking about this stuff and be behaving this way. And this is part of the way that we've tried to drive the transformation of VSP.
It's really how do you drive the outcome, right? It's how do you drive the value to the agency? How do you drive the outcome? It's not the control. Yes, we're still doing things for DHRM on paper-based with electronic signatures. You won't ever get me to stop talking about that. But how do you make this, and you're doing it? This is important. This is not 4 hours a week.
Yep.
This is this is the 8 to 10. This is your 12 hours a week. And I'm going on the base 40 because somebody said earlier about overwork and stuff like that, so that the next 120 don't count. Right. But yeah, how do you make that important to drive the outcome of this is this important, right? Both to the agency, and to the outcomes that we anticipate. That's totally true.
Absolutely. All right, we're going to turn this over now to our applicant panel. Barbara, take it away.
So this has been a great conversation on the EWPs, but I think we have a poll right now for the audience. So you're going to get feedback. We all get feedback day in and day out, but how frequently do you like to get feedback on your job performance so that you know where you are, where you stand, how you're gauged? So I don't know who's putting up the poll questions. Somebody is.
That's me.
Somebody's putting up my poll question. Thank you.
It's taking a while to load, that's all.
It's getting tired. It's the middle of the day.
I guess so.
Well, that was quick. Let's give it another 10. It's shifting again. So that's interesting. So we got a monthly and a quarterly kind of in the lead, if not more frequently. That's fair. I didn't ask that question. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and close that with monthly. So I guess for a lot of people, is that some kind of like a monthly meeting with your supervision? Is that formal written? So let's go to, if you're Gunderpreet, how about you? Where did you fall in that, and where are you comfortable? How often do you want to have feedback for your EWP so that you know where you are?
I would say I'll go with definitely monthly, at least month by month, and where we need to progress and work. And I'll talk with my manager and have my progress towards that. I'm inclined more onto the monthly.
I'm kind of the same way. I want the feedback frequently so I can adjust and adapt. But it also, I know it also is work for the supervisor, and it's work for me because I want to come prepared. So I want to reduce the frequency, or that suggests I want to reduce the frequency. So it's kind of a toss up for me.
How about you, Mohan? I'll talk to you in a little bit. Did I lose Mohan?
No, I'm here.
Okay.
Actually,
Sorry.
I have some people here.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So how often do you prefer to have reviews? Actually, I prefer to have every 6 months reviews on a timeline. So
Okay. So, Dave, how is Agile actually addressed in the EWP that you have today, from your perspective?
Yeah, when I came on in 2019, it was essentially a one-liner. I don't know what the one-liner was at this point, but it was kind of broad. But I understood, and I wasn't hired as a Scrum person. I was hired for a project. Today, it's become fleshed out as Ajaz and Stephen were talking about. Some of the items in there are expertise in Agile principles and practices is attained. I encourage, or they expect me to encourage and promote Agile practices and the mindset within the team. Agile teams are effectively led. Pardon me. Agile principles are effectively taught. Product backlog is managed and stakeholders are engaged. That's a big one for me in my position. Facilitates sprint activities, and that's not just for the Scrum Master, but it's for everybody on the team, I assume. Knowledge of current Agile tools and practices is attained. So those are some of the items in my current EWP that I try to document for my performance appraisal.
Gundar, as a Scrum Master, since you're both in the same organization, is yours similar to that? Do you feel like there's more in your EWP?
Yes, I would say that as David addressed that back in 2019, he had a one-liner. For me, that was absolutely contrast. I joined the VSP last year, and my EWP is pretty well defined, and it's I would say it has covered the whole lot of work title, my job description, core responsibilities, pretty extensive, like Stephen was talking earlier as he was showing over there. So I would say that for me, and when I joined VSP versus in 2019, and now the VSP has gone ahead in pretty well defining on the AWPs.
Yeah, I would jump in and say Gurinder is a plant. He's the first person. He's the first person that we actually hired specifically in the Scrum Master role. Mm-hmm. So we wrote the Scrum Master EWP for Gurinder's position.
From the heart.
So Grenda, now that you're in the position, are there things that you think should be different in your EWP? Do you think there should be more or less? Is it perfect? How do you feel?
I believe as of now it's pretty extensive and good, and it's always a learning curve. Like as how this trends and situation changes, we can definitely keep on moving and keep modifying those as the things go. Yeah.
So my experience is interesting because I came from an IT PMO role where I was the PMO manager at VDOT, and there was a lot of Agile in my EWP because I was expected to work with all of the different Agile teams there and train Agile and do all of that work. Here, I find at Vita, there's a little less Agile in my EWP. It's more know all of the methodologies. So I think it kind of, for me, it's a little broader at this point, where VDOT, it was much more structured and focused on being in the Agile environment and working that way. So.
Yeah, I'll just jump in and say that for our EWPs, yes, Gurinder's was more catered towards the Scrum Master, so that was more extensive. But also, for me, it's whether it's project managers or business analysts, we do have a section in the EWP which is about 15%. That section is just Agile leadership. That's for every individual to contribute to the mindset of Agile and think in those terms, including project managers. We encourage project managers as well to incorporate, because most of the project managers are, at least what we have right now is a lot of vendor management, but we do ask them to encourage those practices and come to a common ground with the vendor project manager as well, so they can bring some fashion of Agile into their processes. So.
When you're looking at your EWP, and this is for anybody, panel, anyone, do you ever ask, what do I need to do to exceed expectations here? I mean, we all want to exceed expectations, I think, at our core, but is that ever a question when you're dealing with your feedback sessions that you would ask?
I tend to ask specifically, particularly if my evaluation isn't what I expect or what I anticipate. So I specifically ask, okay, what exactly can I do to meet expectations or exceed them? Unfortunately, that comes at the performance review time instead of ahead of time, but I can incorporate the requests for the next one.
I think those are important conversations.
Mm-hmm.
Anything from the audience on EWPs? All right, Stephen.
Well, if that's it, then that actually takes us right back into the schedule. And that closes out our conversation for the morning about the Agile job posting, the Agile interview, and the Agile EWP, which means that it's time to turn the conversation over to Tim. Tim, currently a project manager at VDOE, has 20 years of Agile experience, including doing something like XP in the late 80s and Scrum in the early aughts. He's been an Agile coach for the last 12 years, consulting at Cap One, Cigna Discover, Bell Helicopter, EMC Dell, State of Maryland, and most recently at VSP. So Tim, welcome.
Turn my mic on, thank you. I just put in the chat some suggested potential retro topic areas just to get the thoughts flowing. First is around the tool, the Teams tool we're using. You know, the quality, was audio okay, video okay, the polls. Interest in the topics today. Did we present a good set of topics? I don't know if this is something you're looking for, Stephen, but potential topics for next CAACs, knowledge quality of presenters, questioners. So anything that you found with this particular conference. So let me share the whiteboard. And I've been pulling comments from folks and pre-populating. So I think, can someone validate that they're seeing a whiteboard now?
Yep, sure am.
All right, so this should be interactive for everybody. You don't have to link anywhere else, but you should be able to go right into your Teams tool and start adding comments. So if you see down at the bottom, there's a heart, a blue bubble. If you grab a yellow sticky, or you could grab any color and just stick it somewhere, and then you can start typing. And they come out sort of big, and so when you do that, you can make them smaller just so that they fit. I think we've got half an hour, Stephen, for this.
We do.
Okay,
Obviously,
so
yeah.
what we'll do is monitor, and if we start seeing things slacking off after, I don't know, 15 minutes, we probably won't wait the whole half hour. But you see, we have things that went well today, and there's keeping with the NFL or the football theme. There's a touchdown. What didn't go well, that's a fumble. And then what we want to add for next time, some wit suggested the 49ers win next time. So please, I see people already adding things. Go ahead and add. I don't think we can tell who's keying stuff in, so it's pretty much anonymous. And then what we'll do is once we see we get to the point where people have stopped adding things, we'll collect similar things together and then chat about things that we can improve on for the next conferences. So I'll stop talking. If anyone's having any technical issues, just pipe up and we can help you out.
So Tim?
Yes, sir.
I've heard that folks that don't have a virginia.gov email address may not be able to actually participate on the whiteboard directly. So if that's you, if you're one of those folks that can't add a sticky note, then type your comment into the chat, and we've got folks that are watching that can transfer that to a note on the board.
This is Tim. Is everyone done adding things? I haven't seen a new one in a couple minutes.
I'm done. Can I speak for everyone?
I was gonna say, well, if David's done. Well, I'm jumping over the cliff with you, David.
All right. Thanks.
So, Tim, we have a comment in the chat that says, "Don't use the whiteboard in the future." This is actually a conversation that the planning team has had off and on for the last 10 conferences, and that is, what tool do we use at this point in the conference? So we would love suggestions on how to do this better. If there's a better tool available to us for collecting responses and attitudes and ideas from the audience, we'd love to hear it. Absolutely would.
Yeah, I was just being, actually it's being funny with that one. It's just that I can't see anything. I'm just looking at whiteboarding in progress, and this organization only allows members to participate.
Oh, I see. My apologies.
Wait, this is Barbara. Are you just seeing like Tim? Are you seeing just Tim's face or just a blue board?
Yeah, I see a blue board. Now it's changing now for some reason.
Okay.
But I've been looking at, actually it's a black background with some kind of little bird on it. Now that it's gone, you're asking me to describe it. But
right. So I can't.
Yeah, it said what I was telling you there.
Yeah, I know you're
go back to it. I could grab an image of it.
Yeah,
okay, I know you're external, so this might not work, but I actually logged out during our dress rehearsal. I had close to the same experience, and when I came back on again, I was able to see it. Can't say it's gonna work.
Yeah, Tim, I just blew you out, I think. So could you reshare the whiteboard, please, sir?
Should I share it as a view or share it as a shareable resource, if that makes sense?
You should be able to get back to it.
Okay.
And if you could share your screen, that would just get it for everybody. There you go. Thank you. Looks like it's coming.
Yep.
All right, so let's if we're, let me go in a little bit. Let's work on what went well today. There were a lot of comments on, so let's kind of group these. Thank you for the conference. Great session. Those sound the same. Thank you for another interesting conference. Love the countdowns. It's a little different. That spacey music in the 5-minute countdowns. Energy and interaction. Participant engagement, great topics and great ideas for building EWPs. We'll keep that separate. Great topics. What's this big one? Type here. That away. Great discussion on EWP. Interesting topic. Conversation between the folks. Enjoy the level of interaction. Now, when there is feedback, there's not enough time opposed to dragging. Didn't go well. All right, we'll put that over here. All right, so for things that went well, there were great topics. People like the EWP, a lot of engagement, good session generally. Level of interaction was good, and the countdown. So, all right, all in all, that sounds favorable. Anyone want to talk about these in a little more detail, or is this kind of captured what went well today? All right, cool. Then what didn't go so well today, just mute the microphones. We're not talking. We had some overlap. The conversation was good, but at times left the theme of being related to Agile. If whoever wrote that would like to say a couple words about that, what was it, disconcerting, or just you just want 100% Agile 100% of the time?
Okay, this is Barbara. I will be brave. Like I said, the conversation was good, but we kind of sidetracked, and I'm not saying the dialogue about, I even put a comment in about remote working. So, but more of like remote working, not like how you feel about it personally, but more, when we pulled it back into what does that mean when you're interviewing, when we're talking about the part of the interview that's about Agile, right? And that's all. Just truing back to where the theme was. I don't think that's all. There was just times when I was like, this is great. Maybe this could be another conversation. That was so didn't go well is probably a little strong, but that's all. Because then there are people who then said the things that didn't really, where we kind of left the lane a little bit, or parts where they said, I really liked hearing about this. So, but that's, you asked. I'm done.
Yes. Okay. Non-COVID COVA emails can't access the whiteboard. We had the little workaround, and if someone would like to help with that, finding another tool, that'd be great. Not enough time for good discussions. Yeah, I think that's been an issue for the last 12 of these, right? Sometimes, for 3 hours, it is difficult to keep it in that 3-hour time period. It's a lot of Vita people. They always creep me out. Oh, this is the one I probably didn't understand either. When there is feedback, there was not enough time, opposed to dragging on and on. Is this a similar comment to Barbara? Is this you again?
Yes, of course it's me. So this went well. So what I was saying was, what went well is that when you get a comment and that it didn't go well, that there was not enough time, that went well. That opposed to someone saying, oh, it just dragged on and on. This time, when we get feedback that says, I would have enjoyed spending more time, that is what went well.
Okay. So
I was attributing it to the comment of keep going. We didn't have enough time.
Got it. No, what threw me was words like not, opposed to, dragging on and on. Didn't go well.
Well, when you arbitrarily pull out the words. Okay.
Anything else on didn't go well? So I think for what we attempt to do today, this is not so bad. These didn't go well, and it's something to consider for next time. For things to do in the future, so these looks like topics: Agile for operations. That's always fun, like HR and legal and things like that, and not just the technical development teams.
Can the commenter elaborate? No.
All right. Okay. Introduce themselves. If I was in an interview, this is an example of a fail, as I did not. All right. So was this an introduction of everyone at the conference or the people that spoke? Because I thought we did introduce everybody as we went along.
Oh my gosh, I must word these so I have to talk. I am saying myself. I chimed in or added comments, and I didn't introduce myself or frame up the context of who I was as a participant. That's what I was saying. So I jokingly said, if I was in an interview, I could say this was a fail. Like, I start talking and people are like, who is that? And what's this Barbara P versus Barbara B? And isn't that funny for them, but not for the rest of us?
Gotcha.
So
long thing here about EWPs. Do we have a sharing resource? I guess like sharing, Stephen, you had some Agile language in your EWPs. Could we share those perhaps?
Yeah, and I would say I'd be happy to do that on a one-on-one basis. If there's anyone who'd like to talk with me about the way that we've structured some of our EWPs, then I'll be glad to have that conversation.
All right, another CAAC topic, AI and Agile. Ooh, come on, Tim. So I'm just lumping it out over here with this other potential topic. Invite knowledge experts in the AI discussion. Maybe some of those Vita people might be experts, but then they creep the rest of us out. So another topic. I'd like to know more about bringing Agile to team that's not traditionally Agile, but uses some of its methodologies.
Yeah, there's a whole morning there.
Yeah. And then demo of Agile tools implemented. I assume, is that like Jira and Teams and things like that?
Have we actually done that?
We have, and it actually says that in the comment. We've done it before. Always fun to see what we can steal. So.
Okay, but potentially this is a 20 or 30 minute. What's new in tools for future conference. All right. So anything else anyone would like to add into the things to add for later?
So, Tim, I'd actually like to ask a specific question and get some reaction from everyone. And that is, this morning's format was different from every other conference that we've done. In the past, we've done 2 hour-long sessions with a 15-minute break in between. Today we did 3 40-minute sessions with 5-minute breaks in between each of the sessions. Does it matter? Was today better, worse? Strictly from a format perspective, and this is obviously for the planning team to think about in the future as we go forward. Should we think in terms of more topics with a little bit less time for each, or should we go back to more time for a couple of topics?
I think personally that for the topic we were covering, that the breakup, 3 sessions, 2 panels for each session, I think the timing worked pretty well. I don't know that it would fit into a hour and a half topic. I mean, it probably could, but I think this cadence help contribute to more participation. My perspective.
Yeah, you're on the planning team, so you don't count.
Oh, all right. I'm going in.
Said one comment, tend to get antsy in about an hour, so the 5-minute breaks were great. Thank you. And we don't have to fixate on that one, but it's just something that I'm curious about as we think about the future.
Hey, Stephen, as you talk about the future and the planning committee, cough, cough. I don't know if that's a segue for you.
That's coming up. Tim, are we done with the whiteboard? Are we ready to go on, or is there more here?
Unless anyone has anything to add, and if they think of something they want to put it in the chat later, I can check and add it to the whiteboard. So okay, I'm done.
In that case, I'm taking over. And we've got just a few things left to do to wrap up for the morning. So the first is that we have public service announcement number 2. We have a website, vsp.virginia.gov/CAAC. That's where you're going to find a quick introduction to our conference, information about the next one coming up, and content from the last 2. So that's the place you go if you want to see, for instance, the video of today's conference. It's going to be at the website. It's also a link where you can register for the next conference. So if you're looking for conference content, you go to this website. When you get ready to register for the next one, then that's where you go to find it. Okay, just a few closing comments. Want to thank each of you for spending the morning with us. Believe me, we do not underestimate the investment that you and your agency are making by your being with us for 3 hours. We really appreciate your being here. Also, my heartfelt thanks to the members of the CAAC planning team. Without this group, these events wouldn't happen. It's as simple as that. If you'd like to take a more active role in upcoming Agile conferences, the CAAC planning team is always looking for new members. So just drop us a line at cac@vsp.virginia.gov. That email is the one that I'm monitoring. I will gladly respond if you would like to be a part of the planning team. In fact, let me stop and say this more directly to everyone. The planning team has been almost the same group of folks almost since day one. We did the first conference, just me and a few folks here at VSP, but we quickly formed the planning team after CAC 1. And I've had a very consistent membership in our planning team from 5 different agencies all the way up to CAC 12. But with CAC 12, we have lost 4 members of the planning team who are who were very vital voices in the planning process that we do. And then a couple of those folks are retiring, a couple of them moved to other agencies or had their responsibilities changed and they just don't have the time anymore for this. And it doesn't take a whole lot of time, but it is a commitment. But the fact of the matter is the planning team took a big hit just because of life. People have moved on and we need your voice. So if you have any interest at all in working with a planning team on CAC 13, then please get a hold of me. I will add you to the meeting. We'll get that going for you. It really is important for the future of CAC that we continue to have people interested in helping to drive this conversation. So please, please, please join the planning team. We need you back.
And as one of those planning team members, I just want to reiterate that the time commitment is not significant at all. So please help us out.
Okay, the next conference, CAAC 13, and we hope that none of you are triskaidekaphobic, is coming up on June the 28th, a Friday morning, as always, 9 to 12, and look forward to seeing you then. That wraps it up for today. Here are a few references as you walk out the door. We will see you in 4 months. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you
Have
all.
a great weekend.
Have a great weekend.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.